Jordan sat alone in that diner booth waiting for a father he only saw on weekends when Rick Patterson walked in looking for someone to remind of their place, and when Jordan accidentally bumped his coffee, Rick's hand came down hard across the boy's face, drawing blood and shocking everyone into silence. But what Rick didn't know, what none of them could possibly understand, was that the quiet man in the dark suit who walked through that door moments later wasn't just Jordan's father, he was Anthony. Devereaux and Rick had just made the biggest mistake of his life, because some men shout to show their power, but the most dangerous ones are the ones who wait, and today, every person in that small-town diner was about to learn exactly what happens when you cross a man who built an empire on patience. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The morning sun filtered through the Venetian blinds of Palmer's Diner, casting long strips of light across the checkered floor. Jordan sat alone in a corner booth, his small fingers gripping the strap of his backpack like it might float away if he let go. The red vinyl squeaked beneath him every time he shifted his weight. He was 11 years old, black, and trying very hard to look like he belonged there. The clock above the counter read 10:47. His father had said 10:30. Jordan pulled out his phone, checked it for the third time in 5 minutes, then tucked it back into his jacket pocket. Around him, the diner hummed with weekend regularity. An older couple shared pancakes by the window. A construction worker in paint-stained jeans nursed black coffee at the counter. Two women laughed over something on a cell phone screen in the booth behind him. Nobody was looking at him, but Jordan felt watched anyway. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" Sandy appeared beside his table, coffee pot in one hand, menu in the other. She was maybe 50, with kind eyes and graying blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her name tag sat crooked on her uniform. "I'm fine," Jordan said. "Just waiting for my dad. You want anything while you wait? Hot chocolate? Some toast?" Jordan shook his head. "He'll be here soon." Sandy smiled, but Jordan noticed the way her eyes flicked toward the front of the diner. Following her gaze, he saw a middle-aged man in a John Deere cap staring at him from 3 booths over. The man didn't look away when Jordan met his eyes. He just kept chewing his eggs, expression flat. Sandy lowered her voice. "Don't pay them any mind, honey. Some folks don't know how to act." She walked away before Jordan could respond. He pulled his backpack closer. The thing was, Jordan was used to this. Not comfortable with it, but used to it. He lived with his mom in the city, went to a school where he wasn't the only black kid in class. But every other weekend, his dad picked him up and they came out here to this small town on the edge of nowhere. His dad said he liked the quiet. Jordan wasn't sure if that was the whole truth, but he didn't push. You didn't push when you only got 2 days every 14. The door chimed. 3 men walked in, boots heavy on the tile. The one in front was big, broad-shouldered, with a buzz cut going gray at the temples and a faded army tattoo on his forearm. His friends followed close, laughing at something he'd just said. "I'm telling you," the big man said, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "It's all the same story. City people rolling into town, acting like they own the place. Saw it on the news this morning. Some tech guy bought up half of Dalton Street. Wants to turn it into condos or some garbage. That's progress, Rick," one of his friends said, smirking. "Progress." Rick spat the word like it tasted bad. "That's what they call it when they push out folks who've been here their whole lives." They slid into a booth near the counter. Sandy appeared with menus, but Rick waved her off. "Just coffee. 3 cups." Jordan watched them from the corner of his eye, then looked back down at the table. He traced a finger along a crack in the vinyl. His dad's voice echoed in his head from last weekend. "Keep your head down. Be polite. Don't give anybody a reason." The door chimed again. An elderly woman with a walker, then a young couple holding hands. The diner filled up, and the noise level rose. Forks scraped plates. Conversations overlapped. Someone laughed too loud. Jordan checked his phone again. 10:52. He needed to use the bathroom. He needed to for the last 10 minutes, but he didn't want to move. Didn't want to walk past Rick and his friends. But his bladder didn't care about social strategy. He slid out of the booth, backpack still on his shoulders because he didn't trust leaving it behind, and walked toward the restroom at the back of the diner. The path took him right past Rick's table. He kept his eyes forward, shoulders straight, just passing through. Rick's coffee cup sat at the edge of the table, right near the aisle. Jordan saw it. He gave it space. But his backpack, heavy with a library book and his tablet, swung slightly as he turned to avoid a chair someone had pushed out. The backpack's corner tapped the cup. Coffee sloshed. Not much. A few drops hit the table. Maybe a teaspoon's worth splashed onto Rick's jeans. Everything stopped. Jordan froze. He looked at the cup, then at Rick. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "You didn't mean?" Rick's voice was low, dangerous. He stood up slowly, all 6-foot-something of him unfolding like a switchblade. His friends went quiet. The diner went quiet. Jordan took a step back. It was an accident. An accident. Rick looked down at the tiny wet spot on his jeans, then back at Jordan. "You know what an accident is, kid? It's what your parents call you when they're being polite." One of Rick's friends snorted. The other looked uncomfortable. Sandy called out from behind the counter. "Rick, come on. It's nothing. I'll get you a napkin." Rick ignored her. He stepped closer to Jordan, towering over him. "You gonna apologize? Like you mean it?" Jordan's heart hammered. His mouth went dry. "I said I was sorry." "Say it again. Look me in the eye and say it like you understand what you did." Jordan tried. He really did. But the words stuck in his throat. He could feel everyone watching. The older couple by the window. The construction worker. The women in the booth. All of them frozen, unsure whether to intervene or stay invisible. His tongue felt thick. I'm as sorry." "You stuttering at me?" "I didn't mean." The slap came fast. Open palm across Jordan's cheek, hard enough to snap his head to the side. The crack echoed through the diner like a gunshot. Jordan stumbled, but didn't fall. His face burned. Something warm trickled from the corner of his mouth. He touched his lip, and his fingers came away red. The diner gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Sandy dropped the coffee pot. It shattered on the floor. "Rick, what the hell is wrong with you?" Rick stood there, breathing hard, his hand still raised like he might do it again. Jordan looked up at him. He didn't cry, didn't run. He just stared, calm and cold, blood on his lip. "You shouldn't have done that." Rick blinked. For a second, something like uncertainty flickered across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by a sneer. He turned to his friends, forcing a laugh. "You hear this kid? Tough guy now. Rick, let's just go," one of his friends said quietly. "Nah, this brat needs to learn respect." His parents clearly didn't teach him any. The construction worker at the counter stood up, hands clenched, but the man in the John Deere cap put a hand on his arm and shook his head. "Don't." Jordan wiped the blood from his mouth. He didn't look away from Rick. Something in his eyes made him seem older than 11. Something that understood exactly what kind of man he was dealing with. Sandy hurried over with napkins. "Honey, let me see." The door chimed. Every head turned. A man stepped inside. Tall, lean, wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than most people in the diner made in a month. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. His watch caught the light. But it was his face that changed the air in the room. Not angry, not shouting, just present, in a way that made everyone straighten up without knowing why. Anthony Devereaux scanned the diner in 2 seconds. His eyes landed on Jordan, on the blood, on Rick standing over him. He walked forward, his footsteps deliberate and unhurried. He didn't look at Rick. Not yet. He knelt down in front of his son and gently turned Jordan's face toward the light. "Let me see." Jordan didn't resist. Anthony examined the cut on his lip, the red mark blooming across his cheek. His jaw tightened, but his hands stayed gentle. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and dabbed the blood away. "You okay?" Jordan nodded. Anthony stood. Slowly, he adjusted his cuffs. Then, and only then, did he turn to Rick. Rick forced a grin, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, this your kid? You should teach him to watch where he's going." Anthony's voice was quiet. "Calm. Did you touch my boy?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Rick shifted his weight. His friends were already backing toward the door. "Look, man, he bumped my coffee. Spilled it on me. I just gave him a little lesson in manners." He needed a lesson. Anthony took one step forward. Just one. But the space between them shrank like a collapsing star. "Did you touch my boy?" Rick's throat worked. He glanced at his friends. They were already outside. He was alone. "He bumped me. Didn't apologize right. So yeah, I smacked him. What are you going to do about it?" Anthony looked back at Jordan. Did you fight back? Jordan shook his head. A flicker of something crossed Anthony's face. Pride, maybe. He turned back to Rick. Good. He's smarter than you. Sandy whispered to the woman beside her. That's Anthony Devereaux. Oh God, Rick doesn't know who he just crossed. The name rippled through the diner. A few people pulled out their phones. Someone Googled. Another person's face went pale. Rick heard the whispers. He puffed out his chest. I don't care who you are. You city people think money means you can do whatever you want. Walk into our town, act like. Finish your meal, Anthony said, his voice still quiet, still calm. Then leave. You won't like what happens if you don't. Rick laughed. It sounded hollow. You threatening me? Anthony didn't answer. He just looked at him, the kind of look that said everything without words. Rick's friends appeared in the doorway, frantic. Rick, man, come on. Let's go. I'm not done eating. Yes, you are. Come on. They grabbed his arms, pulling him toward the door. Rick resisted for a moment, pride warring with survival instinct. Finally, he let them drag him out. Anthony watched them go. Then he looked down at Sandy. How much for his meal? Oh, you don't have to. He placed $200 bills on the counter. For his meal. And for the coffee pot. And for your trouble. Sandy stared at the money. Anthony guided Jordan toward the door, one hand on his shoulder. As they stepped outside, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Two men in dark suits got out, moving with the kind of precision that came from military training. They fell in a step behind Anthony and Jordan. Inside the diner, the silence shattered. Everyone started talking at once. Did you see that? That's Anthony Devereaux. He used to run. Oh, Rick's in trouble. Big trouble. The construction worker shook his head. That idiot just hit a mob boss's kid. Sandy picked up the $100 bills with shaking hands. She looked out the window at the black SUV pulling away. Then she looked at where Rick had been sitting. Lord help him, she whispered. The SUV glided through town like a shark through shallow water. Jordan sat in the back seat, the handkerchief pressed to his lip. Anthony sat beside him, one hand resting on his son's knee. The two men in front said nothing. The radio was off. The only sound was the hum of expensive tires on asphalt. Jordan glanced at his father. Dad, not now, son. We'll talk at home. They lived 20 minutes outside town, down a private road that wound through maple trees and stone walls that had been there since before the Civil War. The house was modern, glass and wood, understated wealth hidden behind privacy hedges. Jordan had only been there a handful of times. It still felt like a hotel. Inside, Anthony led him to the kitchen. He would a clean cloth, added ice, and held it to Jordan's cheek. Jordan winced, but didn't pull away. Tell me what happened. From the beginning. Jordan explained. The waiting. The bump. The slap. He kept his voice steady, but his hands shook. Anthony listened without interrupting. When Jordan finished, he nodded slowly. You did good. I didn't do anything. Exactly. You didn't hit back. You didn't yell. You stayed calm. Anthony moved the ice pack slightly. Do you know why that matters? Jordan shook his head. Because the man who shouts is weak. The man who waits has control. But he hit me, and now everyone knows what kind of man he is, including him. Anthony set the ice pack down and looked his son in the eye. When you fight back in the moment, you give them what they want. You let them make you into the thing they already think you are. But when you wait, when you stay calm, you take the power. You make them show their hand. That doesn't make sense. It will. Anthony pulled out his phone, checked something, then set it on the counter. How's your face? It hurts. It'll hurt worse tomorrow. But it'll heal. He paused. Your mom's going to ask questions. I'll tell her I fell. Don't lie to your mother. Tell her what happened. She deserves to know. Jordan nodded. He looked around the kitchen, at the marble counters and the commercial-grade appliances. Dad, why do you live all the way out here? Why not closer to us? Anthony's expression shifted, just for a moment. Something sad and old passed over his face. Because sometimes distance is safer. For everyone. Safer from what? From who I used to be. Before Jordan could ask what that meant, Anthony's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowned, then excused himself. Stay here. Ice your face. I'll be back. He walked into the study and closed the door. Jordan pressed the ice pack to his cheek and wandered toward the hallway. The door wasn't closed all the way. He could hear his father's voice, low and controlled. I said, "No, Carlo. Not yet." A pause. "I don't care what you heard. We handle him my way." Another pause, longer this time. "Because he's 11 years old, and I'm not going to teach him that violence is the first answer. We do this smart." Anthony's voice hardened. "Tell the others to stand down. Nobody moves until I say so." Jordan backed away from the door. He returned to the kitchen, sat down, and held the ice pack to his face. His mind raced. Stand down. Nobody moves. The others. His dad used to be powerful. That's what his mom said once when she thought he wasn't listening. Used to run things. Used to be someone people feared. Past tense. But the men in the SUV didn't act like it was past tense. They acted like it was right now. That night, Jordan lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. His face throbbed. He could hear his father moving around downstairs, pacing. The phone rang. Anthony answered on the first ring. Jordan crept to the top of the stairs. "Carlo, I told you." Anthony stopped. "When did this happen?" Silence. "And you're sure it's spreading?" More silence. "All right. Keep monitoring. If it gets worse, we'll address it." The call ended. Footsteps approached the stairs. Jordan scrambled back to his room and dove under the covers. The door opened. His father stood there, backlit by the hallway light. "I know you're awake." Jordan didn't move. Anthony sat on the edge of the bed. "You want to know why I didn't do anything at the diner? You said it's because you wait. That's part of it. The other part is that when you respond to someone like that, you have to decide who you're doing it for. If it's for you, for your pride, you act fast and loud. Everyone sees it. But if it's for your son, you act slow and quiet. You make sure it sticks. I don't understand. You will. Tomorrow, maybe the next day, that man is going to realize what he did. And he's going to spend every moment wishing he could take it back." Anthony stood. "Get some sleep." "Dad." "Yeah. Are you going to hurt him?" Anthony was quiet for a long moment. "No. I'm going to teach him." The door closed. Jordan stared into the dark. Across town, Rick sat at Murphy's bar, nursing his fourth beer. His friends had left an hour ago. The bartender, a guy named Tom who'd known Rick since high school, wiped down the counter in slow, deliberate circles. "You really didn't know who that was?" Rick waved him off. "I don't care who he is. Some rich guy from a city. Not just some rich guy, Rick." Tom leaned in. "Anthony Devereaux. Used to run half the operations between here and the state line. Protection, logistics, construction contracts. Everybody knew somebody who worked for him. Used to. Keyword, yeah. But you don't just stop being that. You retire maybe, but you don't stop." Tom shook his head. "And you hit his kid." Rick's hand tightened around his glass. "Kid bumped me. And you hit him. So what? I'm supposed to just sit there?" Tom walked away without answering. Rick pulled out his phone and started typing. Went to a local Facebook group. Posted, "Just stood up to some city guy who thought he could push people around. His brat kid learned a lesson today. Respect goes both ways." The post went up. Within minutes, comments started rolling in. Some people liked it. "Tough guy. Finally someone with a backbone." But then other comments appeared. "Dude, do you know who that is? That's Anthony Devereaux's son. You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Rick read them, sneering. "Nobody scares me." But his hand shook as he lifted his beer. The next morning, Rick woke up with a headache and a bad feeling in his gut. He walked outside to head to his construction job. His truck was gone. He stood in his driveway, staring at the empty space where his truck should have been. No broken glass. No tire marks. Just gone. He called the police. They said they'd look into it. He called his boss, explained he'd be late. His boss said, "Actually, Rick, we need to talk." Corporate called. "You're suspended pending an investigation." Investigation into what? Didn't say. Just that it came from pretty high up. Rick hung up. He walked back inside, paced his living room, tried to think. This was crazy. Over a kid bumping a coffee cup? That night, he sat on his porch, drinking beer from a cooler because he didn't want to drive anywhere. Not that he could without his truck. A black car pulled up to the curb. Sleek. Expensive. The kind of car that didn't belong in his neighborhood. The rear window rolled down. A man in his 50s, silver hair, sharp suit, looked out at Rick. "Mr. Patterson?" Rick stood. "Who's asking?" "My name is Carlo. Mr. Devereaux would like to have a conversation with you." Rick's stomach dropped. I don't have anything to say to him. That's unfortunate, because he has quite a bit to say to you. Carlo smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. You can come willingly, or we can make this unpleasant. Your choice. Rick looked at his house, his empty driveway, his suspended job. He looked back at Carlo. Fine. Let's get this over with. He climbed into the back seat. The car pulled away, smooth and silent. Rick tried to memorize the route, but after the fourth turn, he gave up. They were heading out of town into the industrial district. The car stopped in front of a warehouse. Big, old windows boarded up. The door was unlocked. Inside, the space was mostly empty. Concrete floors, metal rafters, a single table under a hanging work light in the center of the room. Anthony Devereaux sat at the table. 2 cups of coffee steamed in front of him. Mr. Patterson, thank you for coming. Please sit. Rick walked over slowly. Everything in him said run, but his legs kept moving forward. He sat. Anthony pushed 1 cup toward him. Coffee. I don't want coffee. I want to know what this is about. It's about choices, consequences, understanding. Anthony sipped his own coffee. You put your hands on my son. He bumped me. He's 11 years old. You're what, 45? 50? 47. And you thought hitting a child was appropriate. Rick's jaw tightened. I was making a point. You were satisfying your ego. Anthony set his cup down. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize. To my son. Publicly. At the same diner. You can't make me do that. Anthony smiled. It was the saddest smile Rick had ever seen. You're right. I can't make you. But I can make your life very difficult. Your truck? That's just the beginning. Your job suspension? I made 1 phone call. Your mortgage payment that's due next week? I can make sure the bank loses the paperwork. Your VA benefits? I know people who know people. Rick's hands clenched into fists. This is blackmail. No, this is consequences. Anthony leaned forward. You think you're tough because you served, because you can push people around in a diner. But tough isn't hitting someone smaller than you. Tough is owning what you did and fixing it. And if I don't, then you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Anthony stood. Think about it. You have until tomorrow morning. Carlo appeared from the shadows. Time to go. Rick was driven home in silence. When he got out of the car, his truck was back in the driveway. Keys in the ignition. He stood there, staring at it, shaking. Inside the house, he sat in the dark for hours. He thought about the kid's face, the blood, the way he didn't cry. He thought about who he'd become. At 6:47 the next morning, Rick walked into Palmer's diner. Anthony and Jordan were already there, same booth as before. The diner went silent. Everyone watched. Rick walked over. His throat was dry. His hands were trembling. He looked at Jordan and for the first time really saw him. A kid. Just a scared kid who'd been waiting for his dad. Rick's voice cracked. Kid, I'm sorry. What I did was wrong. You didn't deserve that. Jordan looked at his father. Anthony nodded. Jordan looked back at Rick. Okay. Rick stood there for another moment, then turned and walked out. He didn't look back. Sandy watched him go, then looked at Anthony. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Anthony paid the bill, left another large tip, and walked out with his son. As they got into the SUV, Jordan asked, Is it over? Anthony looked at the diner, at the people inside, at the small town that would never see him quite the same way again. No, son, it's just beginning. Anthony's warning proved accurate. The apology at the diner hadn't ended anything. It had opened a door. Later that evening, Anthony sat in his study, the door closed. Jordan was upstairs doing homework, or pretending to. The house felt too quiet. Anthony poured himself 2 fingers of scotch and didn't drink it. He just held the glass, watching the amber liquid catch the lamplight. Jordan appeared in the doorway. His cheek had darkened to a deep purple bruise. He held an ice pack wrapped in a dish towel. Can I come in? Anthony gestured to the chair across from his desk. Jordan sat down carefully, like he was entering a room he wasn't supposed to see. Does it still hurt? Yeah. Jordan pressed the ice pack to his face. Dad, why didn't you do anything? At the diner, I mean. When he hit me. Anthony set his glass down. What did you want me to do? I don't know. Yell at him. Hit him back. Something. And what would that have taught you? Jordan frowned. That you'd protect me. I did protect you. Just not the way you expected. Anthony leaned forward. Listen to me, son. The man who shouts is weak. He shouts because it's the only power he has. The man who waits, who stays calm, he has real control. He decides when and how things happen. But everyone saw. They all saw him hit me, and you just walked away. No, they saw me choose not to escalate. They saw me in control while he fell apart. And today, they saw him apologize. Anthony's voice softened. Do you think he would have apologized if I'd hit him? If I'd shouted? No, he would have dug in, made about pride. But because I waited, because I let him sit with what he'd done, he broke himself. Jordan considered this. Is that what you used to do? Before, the question hung in the air. Anthony stood and walked to the window. Outside, the security lights illuminated the driveway. One of his men stood near the gate, barely visible in the shadows. What did your mother tell you about my past? Just that you used to be powerful, that you ran things. Anthony turned back to his son. I was in a business that required certain skills. Leadership, strategy, knowing when to act and when to wait. I was good at it. Too good, maybe. What kind of business? The kind that meant people were afraid of me. Not because I wanted them to be, but because fear was part of how things worked. He sat back down. I built an empire on that fear. Protection services, construction contracts, logistics. If something moved through this region, I knew about it. If someone needed a problem solved, they came to me. Jordan's eyes widened. Like the mob. That's what people called it. I called it family business. Anthony picked up his glass, but still didn't drink. I was good at people who were good to me. I kept my word. I didn't hurt innocent people. But I wasn't a good man, Jordan. I made choices that kept me up at night. So why did you stop? Because you were born. Anthony's voice cracked slightly. When I held you for the first time, I realized I didn't want you to grow up in that world. I didn't want you afraid of your own father. So I stepped back, made arrangements, let other people take over the day-to-day operations. I kept just enough control to stay safe, but I tried to build something different. But you're still powerful. Power doesn't just disappear. It changes shape. Anthony finally took a sip of his scotch. The people who work for me, they're still loyal. The connections I built, they still exist. I don't use them the way I used to, but they're there. And when someone hurts my son, they remember who I am. Jordan pulled the ice pack away from his face. Are you going to hurt Rick? No, but you scared him, made him apologize. Scaring someone isn't the same as hurting them. I gave him choice and consequences. That's different. Anthony met his son's eyes. I'm trying to teach you something important. Real power isn't about violence. It's about understanding people, knowing what they fear, what they want, and using that knowledge wisely. That sounds manipulative. It is. But so is hitting someone smaller than you to feel big. The question is what you do with that power. Do you use it to help people or hurt them? Before Jordan could answer, Anthony's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression changed. Go finish your homework. We'll talk more later. Jordan stood, but hesitated at the door. Dad, I'm glad you're my father. Anthony smiled, genuine warmth breaking through his careful control. Me too, son. When Jordan left, Anthony answered the phone. Carlo, we need to talk. Can't do it over the phone. Tomorrow. It needs to be tonight, Anthony. Things are moving. Anthony closed his eyes. 1 hour. The usual place. He drove into town alone. No bodyguards, no SUV. Just his personal sedan, understated and forgettable. The usual place was a private room above an Italian restaurant that had been in the same family for 60 years. The owner, Marco, had served Anthony's father decades ago. Carlo was already waiting. He stood when Anthony entered, but didn't smile. Carlo was in his 50s, silver-haired, with the kind of face that gave nothing away. He'd been Anthony's consigliere for 20 years, the man who translated Anthony's vision into action. You heard what happened at the diner, Anthony said, sitting down. Everyone heard. The apology's already on Facebook. Someone filmed it on their phone. Carlo poured 2 glasses of wine. 17,000 views as of an hour ago. Let them watch. That's the problem. They are watching, and they're talking. Some people think you've gone soft, that you made a spectacle of yourself over a kid's bruise. Let them think what they want. Anthony, Carlo's voice hardened. We have operations that depend on your reputation. When people think you're weak, they test boundaries. 3 of our logistics partners are already asking questions about contract terms. One of our city council connections stopped returning calls. Then we remind them who we are. Quietly. That's not how this works anymore. You used to understand that. Carlo leaned forward. You want to be a good father? Fine. But you can't be half in this world. Either you're still the boss, or you hand it over to someone who can do what needs to be done. Anthony's eyes went cold. Careful, Carlo. I'm being honest. You taught me that honesty between us was non-negotiable. Carlos softened slightly. I'm not questioning your authority. I'm questioning your strategy. You handled that situation with more restraint than I would have used, but restraint looks like weakness to people who don't understand the game. Then we teach them. How? By making more people apologize on camera. Anthony stood. By showing them that control is more dangerous than chaos. The man at the diner, Rick Patterson, he'll never forget what happened. And neither will anyone who saw it. They'll remember that I didn't need to shout or threaten. I just acted, and his world fell apart. Carlos studied him. You really believe that? Edo. Then I hope you're right. Because word travels, Anthony. And not everyone who hears this story will interpret it the way you want them to. Anthony left without another word. On the drive home, he thought about Carlo's warning. His old friend wasn't wrong. Perception mattered in this business. But Anthony was tired of the old ways, tired of ruling through fear alone. He wanted Jordan to see a different path, but the world wasn't ready to let him walk it. The next morning started normal. Jordan ate breakfast, packed his backpack for school. Anthony made him scrambled eggs and toast, the bruise on Jordan's face still dark, but fading at the edges. You sure you're ready to go back? Anthony asked. I can't hide forever. You're not hiding. You're healing. There's a difference. I want to go. I've got a math test. Anthony drove him to school, watched him walk through the front doors. 2 kids pointed and whispered. Jordan kept his head up. Anthony pulled away and headed to his office, a small suite in a building downtown that handled his legitimate business interests. Import-export, mostly. Legal, boring, profitable. His assistant, Grace, greeted him with coffee and a folder. You've got 3 calls to return and a meeting at 11. Cancel the meeting. It's with the mayor. Anthony paused. Since when does the mayor want to meet with me? Since yesterday. He didn't say what it's about, but his assistant said it was important. Anthony took the folder and went into his office. He didn't open it. Instead, he stared out the window at the town square below. People moved through their lives, buying coffee, walking dogs, completely unaware of the currents running beneath the surface. His phone rang. Unknown number. Devereaux. Mr. Devereaux, this is Detective Harris with the County Sheriff's Office. We need to ask you a few questions about an incident at Palmer's Diner. Anthony's hand tightened on the phone. What kind of questions? Just routine. We had a complaint filed about a disturbance. Thought you might have some information. Who filed the complaint? I'm not at liberty to say. Can you come down to the station? I'll have my lawyer call you. That's not necessary. This is just a conversation. Everything is necessary, detective. Have a good day. Anthony hung up and immediately dialed his attorney. Michael Bradford, sharp as a knife and twice as expensive. Michael, I need you to call the county sheriff's office. Detective Harris. Someone filed a complaint about the diner incident. On what grounds? He didn't say. Find out. I'll handle it. Anthony ended the call and sat back in his chair. This wasn't random. Someone was pushing, testing to see how he'd react. His phone buzzed. Text from Carlo. You need to see this. A link followed. Anthony clicked it. A news article from a regional website. Local business owner accused of intimidation tactics. The article was light on facts and heavy on insinuation, mentioning unnamed sources and allegations of improper influence. Anthony's jaw tightened. Someone was making moves. By noon, his lawyer called back. The complaint came from Rick Patterson. He claims you threatened him and coerced him into a public apology. He's also saying you had his truck stolen. And what did the detectives say? That they're investigating but don't have enough for charges. Yet, they want you to come in for questioning. Set it up. Tomorrow morning. And Michael? Be there. Wouldn't dream of missing it. Anthony hung up and stared at his phone. Rick had been broken yesterday, genuinely apologetic. Now, he was filing complaints? Someone had gotten to him, convinced him, or paid him, or scared him into pushing back. Carlo called. You saw the article? I saw it. This is what I was talking about. People are testing you. I know. So what are we going to do? Anthony closed his eyes. Nothing. Let them think they're winning. That's a mistake. Maybe. Or maybe it's strategy. Anthony opened his eyes. Find out who's behind this. Who talked to Rick? Who planted the story? I want names by tonight. Already working on it. And Carlo? No one touches Rick. Whatever's happening, he's just a pawn. Understood. Anthony spent the rest of the day in his office, making calls, reassuring partners, maintaining the facade of normalcy. But his mind kept returning to Jordan, to the bruise on his face, to the choice he'd made to handle things quietly. Maybe Carlo was right. Maybe restraint looked like weakness. But Anthony had walked the other path before, and it had cost him pieces of his soul he'd never get back. At 6 that evening, Carlo arrived at Anthony's office with a folder. He closed the door behind him. Got the names. It's not good. Anthony opened the folder. Inside were photos, phone records, bank statements, and one name that made his blood run cold. Elena Rossi. She's back in play? Anthony said quietly. Never really left. Just waited for the right moment. Carlo sat down. She's been building her own network for the last 3 years. Younger, hungrier crew. They don't remember the old rules. And she's smart. She sees what you're trying to do, stepping back, playing the legitimate businessman. She thinks it makes you vulnerable. And Rick. She approached him 2 days ago, offered him $20,000 in legal protection if he'd file the complaint and do some media interviews. Paint you as the villain. Anthony closed the folder. Why now? What does she gain? Territory, influence, respect. All the things you're letting slip. Carlo's voice was careful. She thinks if she takes you down publicly, your old network will fracture. Some will come to her. Others will go independent. Either way, she wins. And if I fight back, then we go to war. And in a war, Jordan becomes a target. Anthony stood and walked to the window. The town square was emptying as evening settled in. Streetlights flickered on. I need to think. Don't think too long. Elena's not patient. Carlo left. Anthony stayed at the window, watching the last few people hurry home. His phone buzzed. Text from Jordan. Made a 92 on my math test. Anthony smiled despite everything. He texted back. Proud of you. Pizza for dinner? Jordan, yes. Anthony pocketed his phone. Whatever happened next, whatever moves Elena made, he'd protect his son, even if it meant becoming the man he'd tried to leave behind. The call came at 2 in the morning. Anthony answered on the first ring. It's done, Carlo said. We have him. Anthony sat up in bed. Where? The warehouse on Polk Street. He came willingly, if you can believe it. I'm on my way. Anthony dressed quickly, checked on Jordan, who was asleep down the hall, then slipped out of the house. The drive into town took 15 minutes. The warehouse district was dark, industrial buildings huddled together like sleeping giants. The warehouse on Polk Street looked abandoned from the outside. Broken windows, faded paint, weeds growing through cracks in the parking lot. But inside, the space was clean and organized. Anthony had owned it for 20 years. It served many purposes, all of them quiet. Rick Patterson sat at a metal table under a hanging work light. His hands weren't tied, but 2 of Anthony's men stood near the door. Carlo leaned against the support beam, arms crossed. Anthony entered calmly, like he was walking into a business meeting. He carried 2 cups of coffee from the all-night diner on 4th Street. He set one in front of Rick. Thank you for coming, Mr. Patterson. Rick's hands shook as he reached for the coffee. I didn't have much choice. You always have a choice. You chose to accept Elena Rossi's money. You chose to file a false complaint. You chose to talk to reporters. Anthony sat down across from him. Now you get to choose what happens next. She said you'd threaten me. Did I threaten you the first time we talked? Rick hesitated. No. You just made it clear what would happen if I didn't apologize. Consequences aren't threats. They're reality. Anthony sipped his coffee. It was terrible, but it was warm. Tell me about Elena. I don't know much. She just showed up at my house 3 days ago. Said she knew what happened at the diner. Said you'd humiliated me and I deserve compensation. She offered me $20,000 and a lawyer if I'd push back. And you said yes. I'm broke, man. VA benefits barely cover rent. I lost my construction job. My truck's breaking down every other week. Rick's voice cracked. $20,000 seemed like a lifeline. Did she mention me specifically? Yeah. Said you were trying to play the good guy, but you're really just a criminal hiding behind a suit. Said the town deserved to know who you really are. Rick looked up. She also said if I didn't take the deal, she'd make sure everyone knew I hit a kid and got away with it. She'd make me the villain either way. Anthony nodded slowly. Elena's good at that, putting people in positions where every choice feels wrong. So what now? You gonna make me disappear? No. Anthony set his coffee down. I'm gonna give you the same thing I gave you before. A choice. Rick laughed bitterly. What choice do I have? Anthony leaned forward. You can keep Elena's money and play her game. File the complaint, do the interviews, paint me as the monster. She'll protect you for a while until she doesn't. Then you'll be alone, broke, and marked. Or you tell the truth. You go to the police tomorrow and withdraw the complaint. You tell them Elena Rossi paid you to file it. You testify if needed. She'll kill me. No, I'll protect you. Anthony's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Elena doesn't move on people under my protection. She knows the rules, even if she's testing them. Rick stared at him. Why would you protect me? I hit your kid. Because you apologized. And because you're not my enemy. You're just a man who made a bad choice and got caught between two people who should have left you alone. Rick's eyes welled up. He wiped them quickly. I can't keep doing this. Feeling like a piece on someone else's board. Then get off the board. Do the right thing. Not because I'm making you, but because you want to. Rick nodded slowly. What about the money? Keep $5,000. Use it to get back on your feet. Give the rest back to her. She won't take it. She will. Because I'll be there when you give it. Rick's hand stopped shaking. He picked up the coffee and drank. When do I have to decide? You already have. You just needed to say it out loud. Anthony stood. Carlo pushed off the beam, ready to move, but Anthony waved him off. Go home, Mr. Patterson. Get some sleep. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, meet me at the sheriff's office. We'll sort this out together. Rick stood on shaky legs. Why are you being decent to me? Because my son is watching. Not physically, but he's watching how I handle this. And I want him to see that power doesn't have to mean cruelty. Anthony extended his hand. I want him to see that people can change. Rick shook his hand. His grip was firmer than it had been an hour ago. After Rick left, Carlo approached. You trust him? No, but I trust that he's tired of being afraid. And if he runs to Elena, then we'll know exactly how brave he really is. Carlo nodded. What about Elena? We can't just ignore her. We're not ignoring her. We're calling her bluff. Anthony turned to face his old friend. Elena thinks I've gone soft. She thinks making me look weak will break my network. But she's forgotten something. What's that? People don't follow strength. They follow confidence. And there's nothing more confident than a man who doesn't need to shout. You're gambling with high stakes. Always have been. Anthony left the warehouse and drove home through empty streets. The sky was starting to lighten, dawn still an hour away, but threatening at the edges. At home, he checked on Jordan again. The boy had rolled over, kicked off his blankets. Anthony pulled them back up, then stood in the doorway for a long moment. I'm trying, son, he whispered to the sleeping room. I'm trying to be the man you think I am. At 9 o'clock sharp, Anthony and Rick walked into the county sheriff's office together. Detective Harris looked surprised, then wary. Mr. Devereaux, Mr. Patterson, I wasn't expecting both of you. Mr. Patterson has something to tell you, Anthony said calmly. Rick stepped forward. I want to withdraw my complaint. It wasn't true. I was paid to file it by a woman named Elena Rossi. She gave me $20,000 and told me to paint Mr. Devereaux as a criminal. Harris's eyes widened. You're confessing to filing a false report? Yes, sir. And I'll testify to it if needed. I also want to return $15,000 of the money to Ms. Rossi. I kept $5,000 for expenses, but the rest is tainted. Harris looked between them. This is highly irregular. Anthony's lawyer, Michael Bradford, stepped forward from the corner where he'd been waiting. My client is prepared to not press charges against Mr. Patterson for the false report, provided the matter is dropped entirely. We'd also like to report Ms. Rossi for witness tampering and attempted fraud. Harris rubbed his face. I need to make some calls. They waited in a conference room for 2 hours. Michael made notes. Rick stared at his hands. Anthony checked his phone. Jordan had texted, "Hope your meeting goes okay." Finally, Harris returned. "All right. The complaint is withdrawn. We'll open an investigation into Ms. Rossi, but I can't promise anything. These cases are tricky." "Understood," Anthony said. Outside, Rick turned to Anthony. "What now?" "Now you go home. Stay available in case the police need you. And stay away from Elena." "What if she comes after me?" Anthony pulled out a business card and wrote a number on the back. "Call this if you see her or anyone connected to her. Day or night." Rick took the card. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me. Just do better. That's all any of us can do." Rick nodded and walked away. Anthony watched him go, then turned to Michael. "Elena's going to escalate." "Probably. What's your play?" "I'm going to talk to her. Face to face." "That's a terrible idea." "It's the only idea. This doesn't end until we deal with each other directly." Anthony pulled out his phone. "She wanted my attention. She's got it." Michael sighed. "Try not to get arrested or killed. Always my goal." Anthony made a call. A woman answered on the third ring, her voice smooth as silk. "Anthony Devereaux. I wondered when you'd call." "Elena. We need to talk." Finally ready to have a real conversation? How refreshing. He could hear the smile in her voice. "When and where?" "Neutral ground. Palmer's Diner. Tonight at 8. Elena loves it." "The scene of your little drama?" "How poetic." "I'll be there." "Come alone, Anthony. Let's keep this civilized." "I'm always civilized." "Of course you are. That's what makes you so dangerous." The line went dead. Anthony stood in the parking lot of the sheriff's office, watching traffic pass. He thought about Jordan, about Carlo's warnings, about the path he'd chosen to walk. Then he got in his car and drove home to make his son lunch. Whatever happened tonight would define everything that came next. But right now, Jordan needed a sandwich and someone to ask about his day. The rest could wait. The meeting at Palmer's Diner never happened. At 7:30, 30 minutes before the scheduled time, Anthony received a text from an unknown number. Change of plans. Too public. Meet me at the Riverside Hotel, room 412. Come alone or don't come at all. Anthony stared at the message, then showed it to Carlo, who'd insisted on being nearby despite Anthony's protests. "It's a trap," Carlo said flatly. "Probably. But she's right. The diner's too exposed. Too many witnesses if things go wrong. That's exactly why you chose it." Anthony pocketed his phone. "I'm going." "Then I'm coming with you." She said alone. "And you're just going to trust her?" "Carlo esse jotaitend." "Anthony, this woman is trying to dismantle everything you built. She's not interested in conversation. She wants you exposed, vulnerable, or dead. If she wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. She wants something else." Anthony checked his watch. "Stay in the lobby. If I'm not down in an hour, come get me." Carlo didn't like it, but he nodded. The Riverside Hotel was upscale, the kind of place that catered to business travelers and wedding parties. The lobby gleamed with polished marble and soft lighting. Anthony took the elevator to the 4th floor, his footsteps silent on the carpeted hallway. Room 412's door was slightly ajar. Anthony pushed it open slowly. The suite was elegant, decorated in cream and gold. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river. Elena Rossi stood by those windows, silhouetted against the city lights. She turned as he entered. Late 40s, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a tailored black pantsuit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. "Anthony, you came. You asked." She smiled. "I demanded. There's a difference." She gestured to a bottle of wine on the table. "Drink. I'm fine." "Of course you are. You're always fine. Always controlled. Always 3 steps ahead." She poured herself a glass. "That's what I admire about you. That's also what makes you dangerous." "Is this where you explain why you're trying to destroy me?" "Destroy?" Such a harsh word. "I prefer rebalance." Elena sipped her wine. "You stepped back, Anthony. You decided to play the family man, the legitimate businessman. That left a vacuum. I'm simply filling it. By manipulating a broken veteran and weaponizing my son against me, by exposing the contradiction. You want to be feared and loved, powerful and peaceful. It doesn't work that way. You taught me that. She set her glass down. When I was coming up, you told me power requires commitment. You can't be half in. But that's exactly what you're doing. Anthony moved further into the room, keeping space between them. I'm committed to my son, to giving him a life that doesn't involve looking over his shoulder. Noble, naive, and ultimately impossible. Elena walked to a briefcase on the desk and opened it. You know what's in here? Evidence, phone records, financial statements, testimony from 3 of your former associates who are willing to talk about the old days. Nothing illegal enough to put you away, but enough to bury you in civil suits and investigations for years. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. Step aside completely. Sign your territories over to me. Walk away and be the father you want to be. Or fight me and watch everything collapse around you, including your son's sense of safety. Anthony's hands clenched at his sides. You're threatening Jordan. I am stating facts. Wars have casualties, Anthony. I prefer yours to be minimal, but that depends on how reasonable you are. Before Anthony could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Text from Jordan. Dad, there's a video going around school. Someone filmed Rick apologizing to me at the diner. Kids are being weird about it. Anthony's jaw tightened. He looked back at Elena. Did you release that video? She smiled. I have no idea what you're talking about. The video. Rick's apology. Someone had filmed it, and now it was spreading. Anthony pulled up his social media, searched Jordan's name. There was a 27-second clip of Rick kneeling slightly, stammering his apology while Jordan sat beside Anthony in the booth. The caption read, "Ex-soldier apologizes to boy he hit." But the comments were split. Some praised Rick's courage. Others mocked him. And a few, clearly planted accounts, made it about Anthony. Mob boss forces man to kneel. This is what intimidation looks like. Anthony looked up at Elena. You wanted this public. You wanted Jordan exposed. I wanted people to see who you really are. A man who uses power to humiliate others, even when you pretend it's about justice. She picked up her wine glass again. How does it feel, knowing your son is now part of the narrative? Knowing every kid at his school is watching that video, forming opinions. Anthony's phone buzzed again, this time from Sandy. Mr. Devereaux, someone's been sitting outside the diner for the past hour. Black SUV, tinted windows. Not your people. Thought you should know. Then another text from an unknown number. We saw your video. You were brave to step between them. Another text followed immediately. You might be in danger. Keep your head down. Anthony's blood ran cold. Elena wasn't just threatening him. She was building a web, touching everyone connected to him. You're making a mistake, Anthony said quietly. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, I'm winning. Elena set down her glass. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, this briefcase's contents go to every news outlet and law enforcement agency in the region. Your son will grow up knowing exactly what kind of man his father is. Anthony walked to the door, then stopped. Elena, you think you understand power. You think it's about control and fear and leverage. But you're wrong. Enlighten me. Real power is restraint. It's choosing not to destroy someone when you easily could. It's building something instead of tearing down. He turned to face her. You could have had an ally. Instead, you chose war. War is what I know best. Then you're going to learn what happens when you fight someone who knows peace. Anthony left. In the elevator, he pulled out his phone and called Carlo. Get everyone together. We need to move fast. At Anthony's house, the dining room table became a war room. Carlo sat to Anthony's right. 3 of his most trusted lieutenants occupied the other chairs. A laptop displayed the viral video, frozen on Jordan's face. She's hitting us on multiple fronts, Carlo said, pointing to a map spread across the table. The video is everywhere now. Local news picked it up. Your logistics warehouse got a surprise health inspection this morning. 2 of our port shipments are stuck in customs. Paperwork mysteriously misplaced. And someone leaked information about our city council connections to a reform watchdog group. Anthony studied the map. Red pins marked every pressure point. She's systematic. I'll give her that. She's dangerous. One of the lieutenants, Marcus, added. Marcus was younger, mid-30s, ex-military like Rick, but with better control. My sources say she's been recruiting, promising people territory and protection if they flip. Anyone bite. A few low-level players. Nobody critical yet. But she's offering double what we pay, and she's not subtle about it. Anthony's phone rang. Jordan calling. He stepped away from the table. Hey, buddy. Dad, can you come get me from school early? Some kids are being really mean about the video. Anthony's chest tightened. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Thanks. And Dad, I'm sorry I caused all this trouble. You didn't cause anything. I'll see you soon. Anthony hung up and turned to Carlo. I need to pick up Jordan. Keep working on containment. I want eyes on Elena 24/7. I want to know everyone she talks to, everywhere she goes. And Carlo? No agresivos. We gather information only. We can't just sit here while she dismantles us. We're not sitting. We're planning. Anthony grabbed his keys. The difference between us and her is that we think before we act. On the drive to Jordan's school, Anthony's mind raced. Elena was smart, but she was also impatient. She'd shown her hand too early, revealed too many moves at once. That meant she was either supremely confident or covering desperation. Jordan waited by the front entrance, backpack clutched to his chest. He got in the car without a word. You want to talk about it? Anthony asked. Some kids think it's cool that you made a grown man apologize. Others think you're a bully like him. Jordan stared out the window. I don't know what to think. What do you think happened? I think Rick hit me and you made him apologize. That seems fair. It is fair. Don't let other people's opinions make you doubt what you know is true. Jordan nodded, but Anthony could see the weight on his shoulders. His son was carrying consequences that weren't his to bear. That night, after Jordan went to bed, Anthony received a call from an unexpected source. Detective Harris. Mr. Devereaux, we need to talk. Off the record. I'm listening. Elena Rossi has been making inquiries, asking about your legal vulnerabilities, your business operations. She's being careful, staying just on the right side of legal, but her intent is clear. Why are you telling me this? Harris was quiet for a moment. Because I've been a cop for 23 years. I know the difference between a criminal and a businessman who operates in gray areas. You've never put kids at risk. She's using your son as leverage. That crosses a line. What do you suggest? Cooperate with us. Give us something on Rossi. We'll protect you and your family. I don't have anything on her. She's too careful. Then find something. Because if this escalates, I can't guarantee Jordan's safety. These things have a way of spilling into places they shouldn't. The call ended. Anthony sat in the dark, thinking. Elena was right about one thing. He couldn't be half in anymore. Either he fully committed to walking away, leaving everything behind and hoping Elena would let him go, or he fully committed to fighting back, using every tool he'd ever built. Both choices put Jordan at risk, unless there was a third option. Anthony spent the next morning making quiet moves. He called a meeting with his 3 most trusted lieutenants, each separately. To Marcus, he mentioned a potential meeting with Elena at noon on Tuesday. To Vincent, a logistics coordinator, he said Monday evening at 6. To Thomas, who handled financial operations, he mentioned Wednesday morning. Each time was different. Each conversation was identical otherwise. Carlo, naughtychid. What are you doing? Testing loyalty. If one of those times appears on Elena's radar, we'll know who the leak is. You suspect one of them? I suspect everyone right now. Elena's too informed. Someone's feeding her information. By Monday evening, Anthony's phone buzzed with a message from one of his watchers. Rossi's people are mobilizing for a Monday evening intercept. Corner of 5th and Main. Anthony showed Carlo. Vincent. He's been with us for 6 years. Carlo's face darkened. You want me to handle it? No. We confirm first. Then we decide. But Anthony's attention was split. Jordan had asked to meet Rick near the school football field after classes. I want to thank him properly, Jordan had said. Maybe get a picture together. Show everyone we're okay. Anthony had said no initially. Too public. Too risky. But Jordan had pushed. Dad, I'm tired of hiding. If I'm going to be in a viral video anyway, at least let me control the story. The logic was sound. Anthony hated that his 11-year-old had to think that way. But he'd agreed with conditions. I'll have people nearby. You stay visible. 30 minutes, no longer. Now, as Monday afternoon faded into evening, Anthony sat in his car 3 blocks from the school, watching the football field through binoculars. Jordan and Rick stood near the bleachers, talking. Rick gestured animatedly, probably explaining something. Jordan laughed. It looked normal, safe. Then a panel van turned onto the street, moving too slowly. Anthony's instinct screamed. He grabbed his phone, called Jordan. Get away from there. Now. Dad, what? Run. The van accelerated. 2 masked men jumped out before it even stopped fully. One had a knife. The other reached for something at his waist. Rick saw them first. He grabbed Jordan's arm and yanked him behind the bleachers. The man with the knife lunged. Rick used his belt, ripping it off and swinging the buckle like a whip. It caught the attacker across the face. The second man pulled a gun with a suppressor. Anthony was already running, phone to his ear calling Carlo, but he was too far away. Rick didn't freeze. He grabbed a metal trash can lid from a nearby bin and held it up like a shield. The suppressed shot hit the lid with a dull thunk. Rick stumbled, but stayed on his feet. Jordan, count to 5. On 3, wrong foot. Jordan looked confused, but nodded. 1, 2. On 3, they both juked left, throwing off the shooter's aim. Rick drove his shoulder into the man's chest, and they went down hard. A car screeched into the parking lot. Not Anthony's. Sandy's old sedan, loaded with church pies in the back seat. She saw the struggle and didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd been given months ago by someone who'd asked her to watch for trouble. Special Agent Kincaid? It's Sandy from Palmer's Diner. There's an attack happening at Jefferson Middle School football field. 2 armed men, white panel van, Pennsylvania plates. Stay on the line, Sandy. Units are rolling. Anthony reached the bleachers. The knife wielder ran when he saw Anthony approaching. The second man, pinned by Rick, was winded and dazed. Jordan, you hurt? No. Rick, he saved me. Anthony knelt and checked his son anyway. No injuries. Rick, however, had blood seeping through his shirt where the bullet had grazed his shoulder. We need to move, Anthony said. Sirens wailed in the distance. But Rick held the attacker down. As the man tried to squirm free, he looked up at Anthony and whispered, Nico sells your move list to Rossi. The bell is hers, but the ring is his. Anthony went cold. Nico, not Vincent. Nico, a mid-level logistics captain who'd been underperforming for months. And the bell reference confirmed Elena's involvement. Police arrived, then an ambulance, then a sharp-dressed woman in her 50s with a federal badge. Special Agent Leah Kincaid. She surveyed the scene, then approached Anthony. Mr. Devereaux, we need to talk. Now's not the time. Now is exactly the time. Your son was just attacked. The man who saved him is going to need protection. And I have information you need to hear. She glanced at the attacker being loaded into a police car. That man works for Elena Rossi. We've been building a case against her for 8 months. You just handed us leverage. Anthony looked at Jordan, who stood beside Sandy, wrapped in a blanket someone had provided. His son's eyes were wide but calm. Processing. Not here, Anthony said finally. Tomorrow. My lawyer will be present. Fair enough. Kincaid handed him a card. But Mr. Devereaux, whatever you're planning, think carefully. The line between justice and revenge is thinner than you think. She walked away. Anthony went to Jordan and pulled him close. You okay? Yeah. Dad, Rick was amazing. He knew exactly what to do. Anthony looked over at Rick, who was being treated by paramedics. Their eyes met. Rick nodded once. Later that night, after Jordan finally fell asleep, Anthony called an emergency meeting. Not at his house, not at the warehouse, at a small coffee shop that closed early, whose owner owed Anthony a favor. Carlo arrived first, then Marcus and Thomas. Anthony waited, but Vincent never showed. Neither did Nico. Vincent's clean, Carlo said. I had someone watching him. He never made contact with Rossi's people. Then it's Nico, just like the attacker said. Anthony leaned back in his chair. How long has he been selling information? Unknown. But I'll find out. Don't kill him. I need him alive and talking. Anthony's voice was ice. Bring him to the warehouse. Tonight. 2 hours later, Nico sat at the same metal table where Rick had sat days before. He was sweating, his hands shaking. Anthony entered alone. No coffee this time. Tell me why. I don't know what you're talking about. Anthony slammed a folder on the table. Inside were bank statements showing irregular deposits to Nico's account. Elena paid you $23,000 over 4 months. What did you give her? Nico's face crumbled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She approached me at my daughter's soccer game. Said if I didn't help her, she'd expose my gambling debts. I'd lose custody. So you sold me out to keep your family safe. I gave her minor stuff. Shipment schedules. Meeting times. Nothing critical. My son was attacked today because of information you provided. Nico went pale. No, I didn't tell her about Jordan. I swear. But you told her where I'd be. You told her when and where I'd be vulnerable. Anthony leaned forward. You want to make this right? You were a wire. You meet with Elena. You get her on record. She'll kill me. Maybe. Or maybe you do this, and I protect your daughter from ever finding out what kind of man her father really is. Anthony stood. Your choice. But decide fast. I don't have patience for traitors. Nico broke down, sobbing. I'll do it. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't hurt my family. I don't hurt families. That's the difference between me and her. Anthony left the warehouse and found Carlo waiting outside. You trust him to wear a wire? No, but I trust Agent Kincaid to monitor it properly. Anthony pulled out his phone. We're going to end this. But we do it by the book, or as close to the book as we can get. Carlo looked skeptical, but nodded. The next day, Anthony met with Leah Kincaid in a federal building downtown. Michael Bradford, his lawyer, sat beside him. Kincaid laid out the situation. We've been tracking Elena Rossi for months. Money laundering, racketeering, witness tampering. But she's careful, insulated. We need someone on the inside. Nico, Anthony said. Kincaid raised an eyebrow. You already figured that out. He confessed. I'm offering him to you. He wears your wire, gets Elena on record, and you prosecute. And in exchange, you protect my son. You make sure Elena's network collapses fast enough that she can't retaliate. Kincaid considered this. I can't promise anything except that we'll do our best. That's good enough. They shook hands. 2 days later, Nico met Elena at a closed botanical greenhouse she was renovating. He wore a wire so small even he couldn't feel it. Kincaid and 2 agents listened from a van 2 blocks away. Anthony sat in his car another block over, listening to the same feed. Elena walked among the plants, talking about renovation plans. She never mentioned Anthony, never mentioned Jordan. She spoke in metaphors about pruning and moving sunlight around leaves. But then she slipped, just slightly. Your son has a fine profile. Cameras love him. Anthony's hands gripped the steering wheel. Nico, to his credit, pushed. What do you mean? The video from the diner. The boy. He looked so innocent. It would be a shame if anything happened to interrupt that innocence. Kincaid's voice came through Anthony's earpiece. We got enough. Moving in. But Anthony was already out of his car, walking toward the greenhouse. He couldn't help himself. He needed to see her face when she realized she'd lost. He pushed through the door just as federal agents swarmed in from the other side. Elena turned, saw Anthony, and smiled. Anthony, right on time. It's over, Elena. Is it? Or is this just the beginning? She held up her hands as agents approached. I'll see you in court. And when I do, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Let them know. I'm done hiding. Elena was led away in handcuffs. Nico stood off to the side, pale and shaking but alive. Kincaid approached Anthony. Good work. But Mr. Devereaux? This doesn't make you clean. You're still on our radar. I know. But today isn't about me. It's about keeping my son safe. Then keep it that way. Anthony drove home as sunset painted the sky orange and purple. Jordan was at the kitchen table doing homework. He looked up when Anthony entered. You look tired, Dad. Long day. How was school? Better. Some kids apologized for being jerks about the video. Jordan closed his textbook. Dad, are things going to be normal now? Anthony sat down across from him. Define normal. You know, quiet. Safe. Boring. Anthony smiled. I hope so, son. I really hope so. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. Normal was a luxury people like him didn't get to keep for long. Elena's arrest should have been the end. Anthony wanted it to be the end. But 2 days later, as he was driving Jordan home from school, his phone rang. The voice on the other end was professional, clipped, and terrifying. "Mr. Devereaux, this is Mercy General Hospital. Sandy Brennan was brought in an hour ago. She listed you as an emergency contact. You should come immediately." Anthony's blood turned to ice. What happened? She was found unconscious in the diner parking lot. Possible concussion, broken ribs. The police are investigating. Anthony dropped Jordan at home with one of his security team and raced to the hospital. Carlo met him in the parking lot, face grim. It wasn't random. Someone left a message carved into her car hood. "Ring the bell. Elena's people. Even from jail, she's still moving pieces. Or someone else is moving them for her." Carlo's voice was tight. "Anthony, we can't keep playing defense. They took Sandy. Next time it could be Jordan. We stick to the plan. Kincaid's building the case. The case takes months. We don't have months." Anthony pushed past him into the hospital. Sandy was awake, but barely. Her face was swollen, one eye blackened. She managed a weak smile when she saw Anthony. "Sorry. Guess I should have been more careful." "Don't apologize. This is on me." Anthony pulled a chair close. "Did you see who did it?" "Two men. They asked where you were keeping someone. Kept saying the rat needs to surface. When I wouldn't answer, they made their point." She winced. "Anthony, they know about Nico. They know he's cooperating." Anthony's jaw clenched. He stepped in the hallway and called Agent Kincaid. "We need to move the timetable up. Elena's people are hunting for Nico. We're doing everything we can. Nico's in protective custody. That's not enough. They went after Sandy to send a message. They'll escalate. Then help me. Give me something concrete I can use to lock down Elena's entire operation." "I'm working on it." Anthony hung up and found Carlo waiting. "We need to talk." Privately, they walked to Anthony's car. Once inside, Carlo turned to face him. "You're losing control of the situation. Sandy's in the hospital. Nico's a target. Your son can't go anywhere without armed security. And for what? So you can play by rules that don't exist in our world?" "There are always rules." "Not anymore." Carlo's voice rose. "You think Elena cares about rules? You think her people do? They'll keep coming until they get what they want. And what they want is you broken or dead. So what do you suggest? We go war? Start a body count? I suggest we remind people why they used to fear the Devereaux name. One decisive move. Take out Elena's second-in-command. Send the message that we're not weak." "No." "Anthony." I said no. We don't solve this with violence." Carlo stared at him for a long moment. "Then you're not the man I thought you were." He got out of the car and walked away. Anthony watched him go, a cold dread settling in his stomach. That night, Anthony couldn't sleep. He checked the security cameras every 30 minutes. Jordan was safe in his room, but Anthony felt the walls closing in. At 2 a.m, his phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "We have Sandy's phone. We have her contacts. We know where your boy goes to school. Ring the bell, or we show up at Jefferson Middle. You have 24 hours. Anthony's hands shook. He called Kincaid immediately. "They're threatening Jordan directly now. I'll increase protection at his school. But Anthony, you need to consider that Elena might not be calling these shots anymore. She's in custody. Someone else might be running her operation. Who? I don't know yet. But we're looking." Anthony hung up and sat in the dark. He thought about Jordan's question. Are things going to be normal now? He wanted to say yes. He'd wanted to believe it. But normal was a fantasy. The next morning, Anthony made a decision. He called Jordan's school and told them his son would be absent for the rest of the week. He called his most trusted security team and had them set up a perimeter around his property. Then he called a meeting with his remaining inner circle. Marcus and Thomas showed up. Vincent arrived 10 minutes later. Carlo was the last to enter, his expression unreadable. "We have a problem," Anthony began. "Elena's network isn't collapsing. Someone's holding it together. They've attacked Sandy, threatened Jordan, and compromised our security. We need to identify who's running things and shut them down." "Easier said than done," Marcus noted. "Elena kept her structure compartmentalized. Nobody knows everyone. Then we start with who we know. Nico gave us names. Kincaid's people are monitoring them. We apply pressure carefully until someone breaks." Carlo leaned forward. "Or we take the direct approach. I have a contact who can get us close to Elena's operations manager. One conversation, persuasive enough, and we'd have everything. Define persuasive. Whatever it takes. Anthony met his eyes. No, we don't torture information out of people. That's not who we are. That's exactly who we used to be. Carlos slammed his hand on the table. You're so focused on being the good father that you've forgotten how to be the boss. Your son is in danger because you won't do what's necessary. The room went silent. Marcus and Vincent exchanged glances. Anthony's voice was quiet, dangerous. Get out. Anthony. I said get out. We're done here. Carlos, tu disroli. You're making a mistake. One that's going to cost you everything. He walked out. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. Thomas spoke carefully. He's not entirely wrong. We're exposed right now. I know, but there's a line I won't cross. Not even for this. Anthony stood. Double security on Jordan. I want eyes on Carlo too. If he's planning something, I need to know. Over the next 2 days, Anthony coordinated with Agent Kincaid to set a trap. They'd use Nico to arrange a meeting with Elena's operations manager at her riverfront hotel, the one with the botanical greenhouse she'd been renovating. Kincaid would wire the place with surveillance. They'd get the evidence they needed and shut down the network. It was clean, legal, safe. But Anthony couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The night of the operation, Anthony positioned himself in a service corridor near the greenhouse venue. The hotel was hosting a preview event for donors, which provided cover for the surveillance team. Kincaid's agents were dressed as catering staff and guests. Jordan was supposed to be at home, protected by Anthony's security team. But at 8:47 p.m., Anthony received a text from one of his guards. Jordan's gone. He slipped out through the basement window. We're searching. Anthony's heart stopped. He called Jordan's phone. No answer. He called the house landline. Nothing. Then his phone buzzed. A photo. Jordan standing in a corridor somewhere in the hotel, looking confused. The caption read, "Found him wandering. He's safe. For now. Meet me in the greenhouse. Alone. See. Carlo." Anthony's world tilted. His oldest friend. His most trusted advisor. The man who'd stood beside him for 20 years. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Anthony moved through the hotel corridors, bypassing Kincaid's people. He couldn't risk involving them yet. Not until he had Jordan safe. The greenhouse was warm and humid, filled with exotic plants and soft lighting. Elena's donors mingled, champagne glasses in hand, admiring the renovation. Anthony spotted Carlo on the second-floor mezzanine, overlooking the crowd. Jordan stood beside him, Carlo's hand on his shoulder. Not threatening, not violent. Just there. Anthony climbed the stairs slowly. His voice was steady. Let him go. I'm not holding him hostage, Anthony. I'm protecting him. From you. Carlo's face was pained. You've lost perspective. You're so focused on being gentle, being legitimate, that you've made yourself weak. And weak men get their families killed. This isn't protection. This is betrayal. This is necessity. I called Elena's people. Made a deal. You step down permanently, sign everything over, and they leave Jordan alone. They leave all of us alone. You went behind my back to Elena? I went around your stubbornness to save this family. Carlo's voice cracked. I love you like a brother, Anthony, but you're going to get us all killed. You chose the boy over the empire. Fine, but you don't get to have both. Jordan looked between them, confused and scared. Dad. Anthony kept his eyes on Carlo. You're right. I chose my son, and I'd choose him 1,000 times over. He took a step forward, but you don't get to make that choice for me. Let him go. Now. Carlo pulled out a small pistol, not pointing it at Jordan, but visible. I can't do that. Not until you agree to step down. The crowd below began to notice. Someone pointed. Someone else pulled out a phone. Agent Kincaid's voice came through a hidden speaker, amplified across the venue. Federal agents. Everyone stay calm. Carlo's eyes widened. He hadn't known about the surveillance. Hadn't known he was being recorded. In the chaos of that realization, several things happened at once. Carlo's grip on the pistol tightened. Anthony lunged forward. Jordan twisted away. And Rick, who'd been working security for the event as part of his redemption, dropped from a service catwalk on a rope, crashing into Carlo from above. The gun went off. The bullet hit the chandelier. Crystal rained down. People screamed. Kincaid's team surged forward. Anthony caught Jordan, pulled him close, shielding him from the falling glass. Carlo and Rick tumbled across the mezzanine floor. Rick, using only his good arm, managed to pin Carlo's wrist. The gun skittered away. Federal agents swarmed up the stairs. One of them kicked the gun further out of reach. Two others grabbed Carlo, but Anthony didn't watch the arrest. He knelt in front of Jordan, checking him for injuries. "You okay? Did he hurt you?" "No, Dad, I'm sorry. I just wanted to help. I thought if I came here, if I showed Elena's people that I wasn't scared, they'd leave us alone. You don't have to be brave for me. You just have to be safe." Jordan hugged him tight. Anthony closed his eyes, feeling his son's heartbeat, steady and strong. Kincaid approached. "We got everything on tape. Carlo's confession, his deal with Elena's people, the weapon. He's done." Anthony looked over at Carlo, who was being led away in handcuffs. Their eyes met. Carlo's face was a mixture of anger and sorrow. "I was trying to save you," Carlo said quietly. "You were trying to control me. There's a difference." Carlo was taken away. Anthony stood, still holding Jordan. Rick approached, favoring his injured shoulder. "Kid's got guts. Slipped past 3 security guards to get here. Thank you. For everything." Rick nodded. "Guess we're even now. More than even." The legal aftermath took weeks to unfold. Carlo faced charges for kidnapping, conspiracy, and weapons violations. Agent Kincaid played the recordings from the greenhouse for the prosecution. Carlo's voice, clear and damning. "I called Elena's people. Made a deal. Elena herself faced additional charges for continuing criminal operations from jail. Her network collapsed faster than anyone expected. Without Carlo feeding them information, without the strategic coordination, her people scattered. Some were arrested. Others disappeared. A few reached out to Anthony, asking for mercy or employment. He turned them all away. "I'm done with that life," he told Kincaid one afternoon in her office. "Whatever happens next, I want it clean." Clean is relative. You're still connected to things that aren't entirely legal. Then help me untangle them. I'll cooperate. I'll testify if needed. But I want out. Completely. Kincaid studied him. "You mean that?" "I do." "All right. Let's talk terms." Over the next month, Anthony worked with federal attorneys to restructure his business interests. He signed away operational control of every company with questionable ties, converting them into community trusts run by accountants and lawyers Kincaid's office approved. He kept one small import firm, legitimate and boring, with Jordan's name listed as a future managing partner. If he wants it, Anthony told his attorney. If he doesn't, he can sell it or close it. "I'm giving him the choice I never had." Rick came by the house one afternoon. Jordan was practicing piano in the living room, the melody drifting through the open windows. "Wanted to check on the kid," Rick said. "And on you. We're managing. How's your shoulder?" "Healing. Doctor says I'll have full mobility in a few months." Rick sat on the porch steps. "I've been going to therapy. The VA kind. Talking about the anger, the impulse control issues. It helps." "Good. That's good. Sandy's been helping too. She introduced me to her church group. They do community service stuff. Building houses, serving meals. Keeps me busy." Rick looked out at the driveway. "I'm trying to be better. Not just for you or Jordan, but for me. That's all anyone can ask." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to Jordan's piano practice. He was getting better, the notes more confident. Later that week, Anthony received a visitor he hadn't expected. Elena Rossi, in an orange jumpsuit, sat across from him in a federal holding facility visiting room. "I wanted to see you before my trial," she said. Her hair was loose now, no longer pulled back in that severe bun. She looked older, tired. "To apologize. I don't want your apology. I know, but I'm giving it anyway." She leaned forward. "I convinced myself that taking you down was about territory, about power. But really it was about proving I could, that I was as strong as you used to be. I was wrong. You threatened my son. I did, and I'll pay for that. But Anthony, I want you to know that the order to grab Sandy, to threaten Jordan directly, that came from Carlo. Not me. I wanted to beat you, not hurt children. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to make you understand that Carlo wasn't acting on my orders at the end. He went rogue because he couldn't accept what you were becoming. Elena sat back. He loved you. That's why he betrayed you. He thought he was saving you from yourself. Anthony stood. I hope you find peace in prison, Elena, because that's where you'll spend the next 20 years. I know, and maybe that's exactly where I belong. He left without looking back. The diner reopened 2 weeks after Sandy was released from the hospital. She insisted, despite Anthony's offer to cover her medical bills and lost wages indefinitely. I need to work, she told him. Keeps me sane. On the first day back, Anthony and Jordan came in for lunch. The whole town seemed to be there, supporting Sandy, curious about the Devereaux family, trying to understand what had happened. Anthony and Jordan slid into their usual booth. Sandy brought the menus, then paused. Thank you, she said simply, for everything you did, for protecting me. You protected us first. That night at the football field, you called Kincaid. You saved Jordan's life. Sandy's eyes misted. Guess we're all looking out for each other now. A few booths over, Rick sat with his coffee, doing a crossword puzzle. He nodded at Jordan, who waved back. As they ate, Jordan asked, Dad, what happens to Carlo? He'll go to trial. Probably prison. Do you hate him? Anthony considered the question. No, I'm angry, disappointed, hurt, but I don't hate him. He was my friend for a long time. He just made terrible choices at the end. Because he thought he was protecting you? Because he couldn't accept that I'd changed, that I wanted something different than what we'd built together. Anthony set down his fork. Sometimes people who love you can't see who you're becoming. They only see who you were. Jordan absorbed this. Are you glad you changed? Every day. Because it means I get to have breakfast with you without looking over my shoulder. It means you get to grow up without being afraid. I'm not afraid anymore. Good. You shouldn't be. They finished their meal. When Anthony went to pay, Sandy waved him off. This one's on the house. Sandy, I insist. Consider it a thank you. Anthony smiled and left $100 bill as a tip instead. As they walked out to the car, a teenager approached Jordan. Hey, aren't you the kid from that video? The one where the guy apologized. Jordan glanced at his father, then back at the teen. Yeah, that's me. That was pretty cool. You handled it like a boss. Jordan smiled. My dad taught me that the man who waits has control. The teenager nodded, impressed, and walked away. In the car, Anthony looked at his son. You remember that? I remember everything you tell me, even when I pretend not to. Anthony laughed, genuine and warm. When did you get so smart? I learned from the best. They drove home through town, past the diner, past the school, past the warehouse district where so much had happened. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. At home, Anthony found a small silver bell on his desk. Not one of Elena's bug bells, but a new one, simple and clean. A gift from Jordan, left with a note, for birthdays and good news only. Anthony placed it on a high shelf where Jordan could reach it only by stretching. Safe, but accessible. That night, as Jordan practiced piano and Anthony read in his study, his phone buzzed. Text from Agent Kincaid. Your cooperation sealed 3 major convictions. Elena's network is dismantled. You're clear, Mr. Devereaux. Stay that way. Anthony typed back. That's the plan. He set his phone down and listened to the music drifting through the house. Jordan had moved on to a new piece, something more complex. He stumbled over a few notes, corrected himself, kept going, learning, growing, safe. Anthony closed his eyes and, for the first time in years, felt something close to peace. Weeks turned into months. Carlo's trial ended with a guilty verdict. 10 years for conspiracy and kidnapping. Elena received 23 years for racketeering and continued criminal enterprise. Rick got a job at a veterans counseling center, helping others work through the same anger issues he'd struggled with. He stopped by the diner every Saturday morning and always left Sandy a generous tip. Sandy installed a small plaque near the register. Mercy is not weakness. People asked about it. She just smiled and poured more coffee. Jordan finished 6th grade with honors. His teacher called Anthony to say he'd written an essay about courage that made her cry. He wrote about watching you choose peace when violence would have been easier. He's a remarkable young man. He gets that from his mother, Anthony said, but he felt proud nonetheless. On Jordan's 12th birthday, they went to the diner for cake. Sandy had made it special, with candles and frosting flowers. Rick showed up uninvited, but welcome, bringing a card and a small gift. A book about famous peacemakers throughout history. Thought the kid should know about other people who chose the hard path, Rick said. Jordan thanked him, genuinely touched. As they ate cake and talked about nothing important, a young couple at the counter pointed at Jordan and whispered. Anthony tensed, ready to protect his son for whatever comment was coming. But the woman just smiled and waved. You're the kid whose dad made things right. That video inspired a lot of people in this town. Jordan waved back, then looked at Anthony. Good news, Dad. What's that? People remember the right story. Anthony squeezed his shoulder. Yeah, they do. That night, back at home, Anthony took the silver bell down from the shelf. Jordan watched as his father rang at once, clear and bright. What are we celebrating? You. 12 years of being the best thing I've ever done. Anthony set the bell down. And the fact that you're growing up in a world where bells mean celebration, not threats. Jordan hugged him. I love you, Dad. I love you too, son. More than you'll ever know. As Jordan went to bed, Anthony stood at his study window, looking out at the quiet street. No black SUVs. No armed guards. Just neighbors walking dogs and kids riding bikes in the last light of evening. Normal. Boring. Beautiful. He'd given up an empire to get here. Lost friends. Made enemies. Faced choices that nearly broke him. But looking at the life he'd built, the son he was raising, the peace he'd found, Anthony knew one thing with absolute certainty. It was worth every sacrifice. The bell sat on his desk, catching the lamplight, waiting for the next piece of good news. And for the first time in Anthony Devereaux's complicated, dangerous, remarkable life, he believed there would be plenty more to celebrate. When the people who hurt you finally apologize, is it mercy that makes you accept it, or is it power? And if you had to choose between being feared and being free, which would you pick? Like and subscribe for more stories that make you question everything you thought you knew about strength.